Welcome to Fighting Forward for Our Future. I am your host, Dr. Jesus Estrada. Today we have the privilege and honor of featuring Daniel Brooks, poet and special educator from Indianapolis. He is going to be talking about his forthcoming book, For Our People, being published by Barrio Blues Press. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey, Sue, can you hear me?
Absolutely, you sound great. How do I sound?
Oh, it sounds great.
So I was just telling our listeners or future listeners that in Chicago, the infection rates have been atrocious, and still, lying Lori Lightfoot takes advice from Dr. Awadi, who is happy with the numbers, but 64% of the infections in Chicago are from CPS schools. And I'm sure you're aware, but two mothers from Jensen Scholastic Academy died over a month ago, and it was a predominantly black school on the west side. They had 60% of the population quarantined. At the time, there was no contact tracing, no testing. And two mothers, 39 and 42, died. And Dr. Awadi had the cajones to say that you couldn't say it was COVID related. So it's criminal. I charge COVID racist genocide. I would charge COVID racist genocide until the day I die. And it's really criminal and unconscionable that they're jeopardizing our kids because they want to pretend that things are normal when they're not. So that's what I let in. I also introduce you, Daniel. Daniel Brooks is just the most amazing poetry editor I've ever encountered. He sits in the Unity editorial board, and again, the Unity anthologies, one of which is coming out before Christmas, Unity Volume 2, a speculative anthology. The profits go to, all the proceeds go to Doctors Without Borders. But Daniel is also a special educator from Indiana, which is one of the worst states dealing with COVID. I don't even think they do contact tracing there. But he's also putting out a book through my press called For My People, which is such a dope title. So, Daniel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jesus, for that introduction. I really appreciate it, and I neglect to call myself an activist because there's so many people out there actually doing the work and on the ground and whatnot. But yeah, I've been a teacher I've been in education for about 5 or 6 years now. Been a special education teacher for about 4 years. And I've also been writing for about that amount of time as well. Wrote my first poem around the time that the uprisings were happening in Ferguson in response to Michael Brown being murdered
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
police. He was very close in age to me at that time. I mean, he was an 18-year-old. I was about 23. So, and I shared a lot in common with him. I wasn't an angel myself, at that age and at the age that I was at that time. I had done, things that I wasn't, but my life wasn't ended because of it.
That's right.
And it was an eye opener for me to say that, because I knew then and there that I easily could have been in his shoes. Like I easily could have been him. So, and then the response from the people of Ferguson really inspired me. And that was the first poem that I wrote was in 2014.
Mm.
I've been writing ever since. And and being a teacher, and you just spoke to the situation in Chicago. As you said here, it's very, very bad in Indiana. As a matter of fact, more people have died in Marion County, where Indianapolis is at. More people have died from COVID in Marion County than the entire country of Cameroon, in
Jesus.
let alone the state. So that can kind of just, give you a little teeny tiny picture of how bad not only COVID is here in Indiana, but in this country, where a county accounts for more deaths than entire countries.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So,
And I think one of the I mean, I was talking to somebody. I don't want to be a negative downer because I have been in this fight for over 10 weeks. I've been in other struggles, but this one in particular, because of just how insidious these policies are. And I gotta first of all start with the CDC when they told people they could take their masks off,
mm,
right? And then they said that people who were infected here in the school system, if you vaccinate and you test positive, you're told you can still come to school, which is stupid because part of the issue is the policies aren't based on science. So I'll give you another example. Here in CPS, the Chicago Public Schools, I don't know who, they pulled it out of their butt. They basically said you can quarantine, but 10 days, when 2 weeks is a standard. And one of the problems is, again, Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Dr. Awadi and her cronies, who have basically said to the principals, quarantining is disruptive. She's going to clamp down on it. Why? It's just like, don't you care? And I tweet at her all the time. She doesn't listen. She's not going to listen. Unfortunately, they didn't care when two young mothers died. They don't care that the infection rates are in predominantly black and brown communities and poor communities. And it's infuriating because, politicians talk a good game. And she talked a sweet game.
Yeah,
She was going to be the black, progressive, lesbian, for the people, all this, no offense to your title. But she's even stabbed the cops in the back. And so a lot of this is driven by profiteering, corporatizing, and another thing she's done is Chicago got a substantial amount of money in CARES funding. If you don't know what CARES funding are, those are the monies that the federal government provided for safety of kids or for technology, what have you. So she got $2 billion, not she, but the city of Chicago got $2 billion. And what this woman did is that she supposedly put that money into the police departments, but instead of hiring police officers, which I don't think is the answer, they contracted that money out. Currently, they have $2.2 billion. So let's add it up. Basic math: $4.2 billion.
hmm.
And before school started, they were then hiring contact tracers. And they didn't hire. They had like 12 contact tracers. So we have 600 public schools. I don't know how many students. It's just ridiculous. And they the lies, like they have a weekly. I don't even know if they do this anymore. They were having a weekly call in to ask questions kind of thing. And whenever people were criticizing or asking a question that Arwadi didn't want to answer, she would mute people out and answer whatever she wanted to. It's just, they're just playing games, and they're playing Russian roulette with our kids and the teachers and the staff. I applaud the principal where my son and daughter go to school, because she has been ethical in quarantine when she needed to. And yes, it is disruptive, but I'd rather have a little bit of disrupting than my kids dying.
Right.
And people don't want to recognize too. Arizona probably has some of the highest death rates. There have been over 500 children that have died in Arizona
Oh my God.
because they're reporting. Who knows what the numbers are in Florida, Mississippi, these states that are penalizing people for wearing masks. Who the parents and the boards have to fight. And this is just, to me, it's just just become such a racial, classist, fascist thing that's happening in this country. And I was talking to a mom. I went out of town this weekend with my family, and this mom of five, I think, she was asking me, well, do you think we're going to get out of it next year? And I said no.
No.
Because they chose to privatize vaccines as opposed to provide them publicly like they have in the past. So what they've done in Chicago, like I'm sure they've done in many parts of the country, is that instead, well, let's be real, the Chicago Department of Public Health is just gutted. It's been gutted since Reagan. They used to have thousands of employees. Now they have a couple hundred for a city this vast. And then you have an idiot like Arwadi running things. But what's happened is that they oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought because my rat's interrupting me. My little rat's next to me. She's jumping up on her cage. But they don't have, they just don't have the proper infrastructure, first of all,
Hmm.
to provide the vaccine for people. What they should have done was had vaccination centers in schools like they did in the past, right? And so what they've done instead, though, is that they sent the vaccine to CVS and Walgreens and private pediatricians. And in black and brown communities, you don't see a vast number of private pediatricians. And so it's a struggle. It's been a struggle. Also too, the way the transportation system works, it tends to favor certain neighborhoods. And
Mhm.
so it's a problem. You need a car to go to the Walgreens, you need a computer to make the appointment. So all these things are just showing how unequal and really racist a country still is. And I think in Chicago it's particularly insidious. And the thing that, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things that make me angry. A lot of injustices, let's just say. Los Angeles has one of the best contracts right now. UTLA, the United Teachers of Los Angeles, were able to bargain for, first of all, the money got spent on the students in the schools, which is great.
Right.
They have weekly testing, they
Wow.
have vaccines, they have the remote option, they temperature check, they have, you know what I'm saying, like they are doing it right. They have the HEPA filters, which are the correct kinds of filters you're supposed to have to get rid of the virus. Not any filter will do, right?
Right.
And unfortunately they have a shortage of teachers right now, but this to me is amazing. New York, and people may say it's draconian, New York mandated the vaccine in one day. New York, which I believe has the second or third largest school district, we're right up there with them. They were able to vaccinate 10,000 children in one day.
Wow.
I know. And Newark, of all places, Newark, New Jersey, won a major battle also in terms of testing and COVID. And I'm telling you, man, and I ask this over and over again, what makes Chicago so special? With $4.2 billion, so we can't do what UTLA in New York is doing. And the cases in New York are still high, right? But still, I mean, I just think that this motion to put the economy back on track, to treat schools like babysitting centers, is just wrong. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it is, and I think, and there's a number of things that I did want to mention because you mentioned a number of things that are so key. I think one thing is that what you just said is that we have proof that they can do this, like they can
Yes,
put measures in place. They can. This is a even though this is a deadly virus, a contagious virus, it's a manageable virus.
that's right.
It can be managed. It can be stymied. Countries all over the world have done it and have proven that it can be done with preventive measures. The fact of the matter is there have been no preventive measures from the onset of this.
Yep.
And that's what makes it less and less likely that this thing is going to go away. It's not. At this point, it's not even likeliness. It's not going away because no preventive measures have been taken from the very beginning. And since then, so now you have a situation like here, for example, a school district here in Indianapolis. Here it says that vaccinated students who are not symptomatic are not required to quarantine if there is possible exposure. See, this is the type of stuff that this is why the virus continues to spread, why it
Well,
continues to
yeah,
mutate here in America.
exactly. And that's the thing. The mutations are a problem. I hear there's another variant. I told my mom I don't even want to hear
Yeah,
it.
yes,
But
there is a new
the
variant.
other issue is, and people need to understand this, even if you are vaccinated, and I'm not talking just from, I researched this. I talked to Dr. Howard Erdman. He used to be one of the assistants of directors of the Chicago Department of Public Health. Might have butchered his title, but he worked under Harold Washington, who was the best mayor ever in Chicago, probably in the country. But even if you are vaccinated, you still carry the virus.
Right,
The issue is you may not get sick and you will not get hospitalized if you do get sick.
right,
And people think that they can just walk around without their mask and do this and the other. And I think that's where people don't want to, they just don't want to, it's like they want the quarantine and all that to be over, but at the same time they're not safe.
right,
And it kills me. Oh my gosh, it kills me when I see whole families, and a lot of times they're rural white families with their kids and their babies, and nobody's wearing a mask. And it's a choice. They look at us like we're weirdos, and I'm like, yeah, no, you're the one that needs to be safe. What? Like really? And it's just sickening. But let's move on to more positive conversation, and we'll come back to this. So again, we're gonna transition. This is a bad transition. I teach English for a living. This is like the worst transition ever. Let's talk about poetry. In this book, For My People, which I love the title, it's so good. And so I'm the owner and you know the owner of Barrio Blues Press and the chief editor, and Daniel is kindly agreed to have me publish one of his chapbooks. But so we haven't talked about this manuscript yet. No, not really. This is the first time we're actually talking about it in person. But tell me about this collection that you're putting together. And if you would like to read some poems, even if you have that original poem you wrote back in 2014, that'd be amazing. I don't know if you can share a piece or talk about the collection and share a piece, however you want to go.
yeah, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, for my people, it's a collection of poems. A good portion of it has already been published. A few of them have been published in the People's Tribune. and also with Barrio Blues Press and the chapbook that we had Nation. We had
Mm.
a poetry contest within our writing group penned in the city.
And you won that poetry contest. You were the
Yes,
featured poet. Yes, you did.
yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. So it was my first poetry contest win. I was quite flattered, and so really it's a collection of poetry. I think the title just kind of tells it all. It's poetry, like not just for my people, but just for the people in general. Like when we talk about COVID and kind of the apartheid, where we have an economy over the people, a few over most. And for my people is almost like a tribute to the masses, to the people that are often kind of put to the side, the people that are where the decisions get made for them, as opposed to them determining their own their own destiny. And those people would include people that in my family, my people that I've lost, people that are still here, people that are still with me, even though they've passed on. So themes such as race, inequality, capitalism, of course, just a number of subjects. So I'm really excited about it, and I've been putting these poems together for a few years now, and it just all came together. And of course, I want to thank you, Jesus, and Barrio Blues Press, and because I'm almost positive that other presses would be very hesitant to publish such political poetry. So I thank you guys.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure, and this totally fits the mission of Body Blues Press, and it's just perfect. I mean, one of the things about Body Blues Press is not only to publish the works of emerging writers, but to aim for a cooperative society. And
Yes,
and right there, just that issue of what does it really mean to have a democracy?
right.
That is key, and the people have to be at the center of that. Not a ruling class that plays Russian roulette with our kids, that puts that puts what did Lord Lightfoot spending money not even on her own cops but on consultants. I'm like, what? What
Yeah,
is that? None
yeah.
of that money goes back to the city. I'm like, these people, man, all they want is more and more. So let's hear a piece.
Yeah, so there's a few things. So this one's called War, and basically it's a poem basically about the war on terror. I was in fifth grade when the towers fell, and from the time that I was 10 to about 20, I was subjected, like most of Americans, to a lot of propaganda
Mm.
about the war and about patriotism and and just subjected to a lot of lies. So it really took me a long time to kind of gather my own kind of perspective on things and really seek the truth because so much propaganda was being thrown at me. So this one is called War, and I wrote this quite some time ago. We are living in one big continuous war. Few differences between them. Each have silly names masking their crimes against humanity. Follow their contradictions. Oil money gushing out of the pores of policymakers. Military personnel armed to the teeth over poppy fields. Flooding our neighborhoods with drugs. Who would have known that fighting extremism with extremism was a way of preserving democracy? One country at a time, one regime at a time.
Damn, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love how you interwove the war on drugs, the war against the people
Yes.
with yeah, that's amazing. I don't think I'd read that piece, but you really have a knack for I don't know, I can't even put it. Like you're definitely coming into your own voice and style. I dig it. And it's very beautiful rhythmically it flows. Very good.
Yes, I appreciate it. It's taken me. It takes so long, as you know, Jesus, like to really like find yourself because like really when you're writing and you're becoming a writer, you're not just finding yourself as like a writer or an artist. You're really like finding yourself as a person, like as a human being.
That's the conclusion I've come to, and it's taking poetry masters who are far beyond my skills. Even that comparison's bullshit. But what I will say is, I learned this from Matt Cedillo, who is probably one of the most talented poets in this country, international, I would say. But what he says is that you have to figure out what makes your writing excellent.
Mm,
What, yeah, and it's a really, that's probably the best writing advice he's given, not just to myself, but to students. And to you learn your own discipline. And he's thought about this, he's analyzed it, he has his own way of crafting things, and his poem is very beautiful. But he also does a lot of research for for his poetry, which a lot of people don't think you do research for poetry, but I'm telling you, it does enhance the work. You may not use all of it, you may just use one fact here or there, but it does make the poem more profound, and I would say politically responsible. And
yeah.
the other thing too, I don't know if you heard the podcast. I had the honor and privilege of featuring. Oh my gosh, I'm spacing my Tango Ace and Martin, the eighth San Francisco poet laureate, who was crowned king back in January during the pandemic. And the thing that strikes me about Tango is he's oh my gosh, he is an activist, a teacher, a community teacher. Well, he taught at Cornell too. He's also a poet,
Hmm.
black Marxist poet. And what he talks about, he meditates a lot. And he talks about using that when you're not writing, right? To meditate, to get to know yourself.
Yes.
And I think that is really important to for people to get to know themselves. Like I feel like now at my age, and I'm 49, I'm gonna like rock it in my 50s. I am now starting to feel secure within myself as a Chicana woman of color.
Yes.
I'm learning how to deal with my bullshit. I figured out what's important and how to be a good human being to others, especially my family. And it's a work in progress. I'm not saying I'm a jerk. It's just that we live in a society with so much noise and distraction and
Mhm.
lies that we internalize. And you got to fight the lies, whether it's culture, history, racism, misogyny, all that shit that
Yes.
affects men and women and others. But in there, to get to be your best self also means you're a good human being, you're good to others. That to me was some of the best advice Tango gave me, and I've been spending more time uh, thinking and meditating and journaling,
Yes.
and like just analyzing, taking like that meditative step back to see, okay, what am I good at when it comes to writing? What do I have to offer that nobody else has to offer? Because Jesu grew up in the barrio, and the list isn't very long, but I'm trying to like say, okay, so I'm good at Spanglish. I'm good at collecting stories.
Right.
I tend to be. I always get this. I tend to be very sincere all
Mm.
the time, which annoys white people sometimes. And not to be racist, but people don't understand why I'm direct. That's one of the things that I do in my poetry too, in my fiction. And I think that too is also counter-capitalist,
Yes.
because you when you get to know yourself, get to know your craft, you also see how you're intricately interconnected with others. But the capitalist narrative is saying, no, you be an egocentric, self-centered writer. You are better than everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And that
It's
is BS.
egocentric and it's very Eurocentric,
Oh yeah.
very like individualistic. I'm the one that created myself as an artist. When really,
Hmm.
like life in and of itself, like humanity, like living, all the living things around you, we're all like connected. We're all in sync with one another. So that's what creates, the art. And Tango is 100% right. I meditate almost every day, and I've been doing it for about a year now. Uh,
Nice.
I started 5 minutes a day because I could not sit still for any more than 5 minutes. And now I'm at 15 minutes a day, and I journal every day. And it really helps because those days where I'm not producing content, where I'm not writing poems, where I'm not editing other poems or writing a story or editing a story, I can say to myself, I wrote today. Even
Yep.
if it was just a journal of me saying, "Well, I had a cup of coffee this morning. Oh, I'm not feeling so well this morning. Oh, I'm really down." Even if it's just that,
Yep. I
it
agree
really helps.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, you get to the core of who you are,
Yes.
and you get rid of the shit that doesn't matter. You know,
Mm.
Psychologically, spiritually, I think it's really something that, to me, it's a new way of thinking of meditation that's more politicized and real than just like, oh, I'm just gonna meditate for myself. No, no, no. We also have a responsibility as cultural workers.
Mm.
for others. I love that, dude. I didn't know that about you, man. We're becoming kindred spirits. I'm the same way because my brain, like, it rushes. It does all these things to do, multitasking technologies. It's very difficult for me to sit. But I find that for me, I have to do movement and meditation,
Mm.
and I'm at about 5 minutes, and then I like, and sometimes it's good because then I start imagining. So it's good. I'm
Yeah.
producing, right?
Yes.
But meditating is hard. Meditating is hard, and it's a skill. Like everything else, it's a discipline. But I'm proud of you, man. I long for the day when I can meditate for 15 minutes.
I
It's like,
don't know how I got there, but it took a lot of work. Like you said, it's not just sitting there or just, humming to yourself, it does take a lot of work.
oh, I know. Especially, I would say, like, right now. The other day I was just looking around. I had my computer. I was watching a show. My daughter had her iPad. My son was geeking out in his room, and my husband had the big TV on. That also is difficult because these are meant to be addictive things too. You get addicted to
Yes.
social media and all this. So my husband has challenged me though, because I spend a lot of time in my room for a lot of reasons. I suffer from depression, and my room is comfortable to me. But he's like, I challenge you to get out of your room an hour a day. Just get out. And it's hard, but it's also, if I want to be connected to my little comrades and my collective, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I
Like, get
do.
out.
My apartment is like my like safe haven, and I have I got my desk and I got my books. I don't even have a TV in my home. I do not.
Nice.
Yeah. So if I stream, I use my computer. So I do stream things. I do watch things.
Right.
But if I know that if I don't have a TV, I'll be less likely to indulge. And I try to replace that if I can, with reading or doing
Mhm.
something else. Even though, as you know, as a writer, I never feel like I'm reading enough.
Yeah. Oh, I
Even
know. I
though
know. I
even
was
though
reading.
sometimes I read more than the average person, but
Yeah.
I feel like I never read enough.
I've actually become a news junkie. I read in the mornings a lot when I have the energy for it. But I started reading Tunnel by Joseph Sale,
Ah,
who is my copy editor. He's amazing. But it gripped me. So every now and then, I have to go where their spirit moves me and just read that. And I read a lot of Tango Asian's poetry over and over again. By the way, I gotta send you a copy of someone's dead already. I'll mail you a copy. But someone's dead already was published by Bootstrap Press, and it just, again, it's just the poetry is so beautiful in it. But let's hear another one of yours. Your awesome poetry.
yeah. Here's another one. It's called "It Turns Out Birds Really Like Trees." So I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and we saw just a bunch of birds exit a tree all at the same time. They just fly away, and she says, "Wow, like those are a lot of birds." And I said to her, "It turns out birds really like trees." And she was like, "You should make that a poem." And I'm like, "All right." So I went home and I wrote down that phrase, and this is what I came up with. GPS systems ingrained in their bodies, aviators of Earth, singing to the world from sunup to sundown, building homes with small pieces of life in hopes of raising their babies as they'd been raised, nourished to strength, migrating over bodies of water to better places. They know as much, if not more, than we do. They know love, they know life.
Oh, wow, that is gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank
I,
you.
I love the nurture with little pieces of life. That is beautiful.
Yeah, I've always been infatuated with birds. Like every time it's the fall and I look up in the sky, even when I was a kid, and see them like migrating. I'm always like, where are they going?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, and it's amazing how they like have this like clock inside of their bodies that's like, all right, it's time to go. And it's never like too late or like right before. It's always like a month or like weeks before it actually gets cold or that it's actually the climate is no longer to their liking and they get out of there before it even gets to that point. So
Yeah, yeah, though that's gorgeous. I was inspired. I very rarely write nature poetry, but I love nature. I love going for walks and paying attention to the details. And I was driving. We go to Champagne a lot, especially when I'm about to finish editing a book, so the kids can go swimming and I can have quiet. And I drove by this green tree that was just gorgeous.
Mm,
And I wrote the first poem for my mother called Lo Tierno. And but it was really inspired by this tree because where I grew up in the orange, I grew up in the not in the orchard, but the house was in the middle of an orange orchard. So I
mm.
have a lot of fond memories of playing outside in nature. And I remember one time, it's totally random, but I trapped like I don't even know how many tadpoles, and then they turned into frogs. Then I got in trouble and I had to release them. But animals, animals are so compassionate to each other.
Yes,
They
they are.
can be. And so there's a lot to be learned by how they interact as parents, how they protect each other,
Yes,
and that's what we really should be more like. We should be when we talked about the interconnectedness that we have with each other, but so I have this goal as an activist, and it wasn't my idea, but it hit me when my son and I were going to a anti-COVID rally, and we were marching toward Lori Lightfoot's house, and this dude starts talking to me. I don't know this guy, and I don't judge. I don't care about the color of your skin. I care about the color of your politics. And he's got his clipboard. He goes, "Hey, do you want to sign this?" And I'm like, "No, not now." My son was doing an interview with this press, which was 45 freaking minutes long, the longest interview ever. So
mm,
then I started talking to this guy, and he says, "Oh, I'm with the People's Response Network." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I've been wanting to connect with you guys." And so just talking to him one on one, and this was the first time I've been out in public. I only go out in public if it's a protest, a rally, if I'm speaking to a board, or I'm with comrades. We may go to the pet store every now and then, but I'm telling you, man, I become like a hermit. But it hit me in talking. It turned out he's his name's Paul Siegel, who is a member of the People's Response Network, and my son and I joined. But what strikes me, you should join too, Daniel. I think you like this group. But what
yeah.
struck me was that in having this connection as a person, that to me won me over more than any propaganda, any sign. And so my goal is to talk to my neighbors about COVID, and oh, welcome, Nun. Hey, hello. To talk to the neighbors safely, right? And to really get to know them, to get to know what they have to say, and to listen to what they have to say. And so I've actually taken a leap in my educating, comrade. You would be proud of me.
That's terrific.
Everywhere I am, I don't care. I educate, not proselytize. I
Right.
meet I meet people where they are at, and I educate them. And but we have to, like, if we really want to aim for a better neighborhood, a better society, it's gonna take that one-on-one human connection.
Yes.
And I know it's hard because right now we're in our silos in our homes, but that's my goal, man. And my husband's already there, dude. My husband talks to everybody, and I used to get annoyed because I'm like, yo, why are you raising politics for? But he had it right. He had the right pulse, you
Yes.
know. And so yeah, well, let's hear another poem, my friend. And then maybe Nana, if you want to call in, the call-ins are open. If you want to ask a question, by all means. We have a first listener. Welcome, Nana. Nana Akosua. I hope I didn't butcher your name, Nana. Hey, can you read the fourth?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the fourth is the very first poem on there. I thought that
Oh
really
yes.
kind of warm people up, but yeah, the fourth. The 4th of July is something. It's ironic, like being a black person or being an indigenous person or being a person of color on the 4th and during Independence Day, because it's such a weird feeling, because you're certainly not celebrating your own independence. And there's a lot of things that come to mind, and none of it has to do with celebrating freedom, when those groups are still to this very day not free or even citizens by any means. So this one is called The Fourth, and it kind of explores that. What to say to the people whose history, whose existence erased at every opportunity, centuries of terror, exile to desolate places. What to say to the people, their will generationally shattered like car windows at the moment of impact. I reach for letter magnets on the refrigerator, searching for the right words. But what does Lady Liberty have to say to the people? What does this nation have to say for itself? And when will it give back all that it has taken?
That's beautiful. It's one of the best poetic endings. that wraps around so well. I love that poem. And
Yeah.
it was, yeah, your poetry is so good. And I don't, a lot of times I can tell when a poet is a musician and you have that musical ear. I don't know if you play instruments or sing, but I hear it in your poems, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah, I've so before I was a poet, I was a not very good rapper, and I was a lot better at writing the raps than I was at reciting them. And my father also was a part of the choral ensemble for IU, and he also sang in the choir in the church and
Mm.
whatnot as well. So I kind of get that from him a little bit too.
I've actually been thinking of picking up the guitar again because I was listening to my voice and I was like, huh, my voice isn't so horrible. And I'm
Yeah,
not saying I'm going to become a songwriter, but
yeah,
there's something to be said. Tango's actually picked up the guitar and the bass. Somebody gave him these songs. But one of the things that was fascinating to me, like we were talking about meditating, getting to know ourselves, and developing a discipline, regardless of what that discipline is, whether it's cooking, whether it's sewing, whatever your passion is. But he says, like, if you learn to develop your craft in your own way, you can translate that into other crafts. And I was like, damn,
yes.
that is deep, but it's true, dude. Because I feel it when I start to write, my cooking gets better.
Mm,
My expression and how I dress gets better, and it's fun. And so I thought that was pretty dope. Hey, speaking of Tango, I'm going to read you one of his poems if that's okay. I know I think you'll like this one. You may
yes.
have heard this one performed, but it's not called Cow's Mouth. It's actually called Blood in My Eye. I love it because it reminds me of the rhythm in your poetry.
Mm,
I hope he's not listening to this. But okay, so the it took me a while. You probably read more than I have about political economy, but the cow represents colonization
mm,
because the cow has a number of stomachs, and the cow that eats first is the first empire. So if we think about the United States, the first ones to eat, well, maybe they were the Vikings, but the first ones to eat were the Spanish,
right.
and then the English and the French and the Dutch, right? Or maybe not in that order, but this is called Blood in My Eye. Guided by teeth goes a country. There's a cow's mouth on the flag. Peculiar notepad holds street life dear, but the writer ain't here. He's somewhere talking to tombstones about the good old days, or splashing reborn water on his latest face, or wondering how his old gun is doing in the afterlife, wondering how much death trap is in those gas station aisles. There's gotta be $1 million a day on this concrete island. New engine in the moon. Why it never goes down? I mean, 72 straight hours of night, at least according to everyone's posture around here. 8:30 in the morning is really 30 minutes to closing. The city shuts down for a sleepy rat race. Elevators, shoe shuffle to the nearest heaven. Laughing with rats a whole way up. There are scabs every damn where. In puddles of city, in concentrated schools, in TV lit warm rooms. The light reveals military fatigue when it hits just right on the ties that are wrapped around the necks of lazy white guys. Empire is too easy, baby. Chant at the walls all summer if you feel like it. Best way for a target to move is shooting back, running for a tree line made of freeways. Wisdom says against the war machine on Tuesdays, you stand no chance. But may we be the last poor men to play it safe. Cow's mouth on the flag. Politician raises his hand and the crowd shows their teeth. Oligarch raises his hand and little girls are not safe outside. You're all high, depressed, and comrades in function. 15 minutes to closing and the city has survived another black rebellion. Stay down, my love. We just paying dues by trash fires not just anyone can set. Don't you love how deadly things whisper in the moment and men kill like feathers fall while everyone is screaming inside? The writer knows that death is not a matter of dignity, rather humor. In a house that smells like road traces, nuclear percentages on torn stoves. I mean, here, life never was. Just lazy matches and manic inhumanity, hands rushing away from life towards stoves. Well, what are we doing here? Surviving, baby. For no reason in particular. See, nobody's gone far today. Nobody will go far tomorrow. Trust me. Hell and heaven cannot count. Strange gardens were second-hand clothes play, and concrete wishes to be human only to be cannibal, where they find you drenched and drains wish to be humans, only to be worthy arms for you to die in. Read them all, grandson. Prepare for the day when every child is calm. And don't say we ghosts didn't write you a poem. Don't say we didn't dig your life. Remember the shotgun by the coat wrap that everybody in the house knows how to use. Remember the tightrope made of needles for walking in between driveways and man made best friends. Go ahead, grandson. Tune the streets again. Never mind, this country kills musicians first. Broken neck ties, scarred neck life. If these walls could write lyrics, what's your angle, angel eyes? 30 to 50 pounds pass by on a street with no daughters. This street has no sons, just young prisoners of war in a racist city that meant to make capital. And we know so much. We know it all. We were stood against walls. Who's in the third cross around here? Cow's mouth, salivating over the streets. And that is the story of why we aim at teeth. That's dope, right?
Wow, it's
I
beautiful.
know, man. And it's so much in there.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, where do you even begin? But I love how the like the emphasis and the connection between just like capitalism and like death. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
death is just like it's a death machine, or really just the U.S. empire in general. When you talk about war and incarceration and mass surveillance, you know,
yeah.
domestic and foreign. The inherent violence of the establishment of this country of this empire, just death, death, death.
And the way people are living is not alive. I mean, I love how he captures that exhaustion.
Yeah, exactly, and how fast it is, how like the breakneck speed of that. You talked about the rat race and just how it just it's like a blur. Uh,
Hmm. And
so
and too that it was subtle, but the news made of needles is a drug war.
yeah,
But it's the news too that people put on themselves. Not to say that they're to blame, but I think people become alcoholics and drug addicts because of capitalism.
yes,
It's so much, and I also too believe that men, in some ways, when they're told, "Oh, you be the main provider and you be the macho of the house," when there's no jobs, what does that do to a person's psyche, man? You
right.
know?
Yeah, it destroys them. And I think a lot of men don't realize that patriarchy harms men, just
Oh
like
yeah,
racism harms white people. White supremacy harms white people because when
right.
you're living on the assumption, when you're living off of a myth that has no basis scientifically, objectively, empirically, when you're living a lie, it just destroys you from the inside out.
It does, and it makes you less capable of thinking too. I think that's one of the things about have fascists have in common with racists is
Yes.
that they can't think critically. But the same is true of the machista, the
Yeah.
sexist man who only sees things one way, and anything that messes with that worldview leads to violence or death or something horrible.
Right.
Like I was having a conversation with my students. I teach college. I teach composition at Harold Washington College. For those of you who don't know, and we were talking about feminism. I don't remember one context, but I said, I think it's fundamentally unfair that men need to be held at this standard. Why can't they show emotion? And one of the young students, I mean, I'm assuming he's young black kids, was like, "You're right. We have a right to feel and express our emotions, but that's not what we're told. That's not how we're raised." And I don't remember who was saying this. It was another poet. Maybe it was Adam Gottlieb, who felt like he had been cheated for years
Mm.
because he couldn't tap into that emotion. I have a hard time. My dad raised me to be tough. And
Yeah.
anytime I would start crying, he would slap me hard. I mean, I'm not talking about a slap. I mean, like, bam, like, you're in strata, toughen up. And in some ways, it was good because I dealt with racism in a way that was head on
Mm.
once I figured out what was happening, and that toughness helped me get through a lot. But now that I want to cry, I can't, Daniel. and
Yeah.
there are plenty of reasons to cry, and I sit there like an idiot, like just stuck between tears and fury, and it just won't come out, dude.
Yeah.
And so I think when we raise kids this way, we dehumanize them,
Yes.
and I applaud my son when he cries. I mean, I love it that he's feeling for nature and his brothers and sisters and others, and my daughter too. Like, I want them to show emotion, and I think that's one thing that we really need to think about as society, how we program our children to be dehumanized, right? To
Yes.
fit in some compartment. But that's carrying on. So I think today's lesson, though, I'm gonna bring it because I'm gonna try and bring like one lesson from the show that I think is important for activists, and that is to be true to yourself. I think that
Always.
in artists too, I know Shakespeare said it best, to thine own self be true. But meditate, think about, think of who are you, and who are you in the context of your art. And I think just posing the questions and coming up with the answers will improve your art, or
Yeah.
your craft or whatever. So, hey, hermano, can you close us out with the poem?
Yeah, sure. Let me take a look out here. Oh, here's another one. So, just to kind of, it coincides a little bit with the message that you just gave. I had the opportunity to meet Haki Mahabutu at the library here in Indianapolis, and he talked about Robert Hayden and how him and Robert Hayden had this conversation. Robert Hayden, just a tremendous poet, and
Nice.
Robert Hayden always used to tell him, I'm not a black poet, I'm just like a poet. Like he just wanted to be a renowned poet with all the names, not just a black poet. And afterwards, I asked, Hockey, well, I kind of want to be. I have literary ambitions, and I feel like a lot of the work that I'm sending to presses, isn't being accepted. Should I adjust what I'm doing? Should I compromise? And the one advice he gave me, he says, you never compromise yourself.
Amen, brother. Amen. That's the best advice too. You never
So,
compromise
and
ever.
I took it and I ran with it ever since. And this one's called "What We Talking About." We talking about gun packing, resource extracting, never retracting, fierce reactions. We talking about racism, imperialism, colonialism, neocolonialism, all done with precision. We talking about the Indian problem, the Negro problem, the immigration problem, all caused by them. We talking about ruling classes, struggling masses, well-dressed fascists, and makeshift caskets. We talking about revolution, retribution.
Damn. Your poetry just gets better and better, Daniel.
Thank you.
I am so proud and pleased. I'm gonna start fucking crying, dude. I'm so happy, and me, I can't cry, but this gets me because I'm so proud to be publishing your first chapbook.
Yes, thank you.
Honor is all mine, man. I'm telling you.
Wouldn't have been possible without
You too, brother. I'm telling you. Well, listen, this is your second home. I hope to have you back on.
you. Absolutely.
I'm not sure what I'm tuning into next week. I may just have some moms on, but love it. Love the work. Again, his forthcoming book, For My People. I'm not going to stamp date it because I have about 5 other books I'm putting out, but within the year, of course, and it will be available on Amazon, and also to get signed copies from Daniel, which is one of the things I hope to work out with you later. But definitely, and Barrio Blues Press, a mission is to move towards a cooperative society and uplift emerging voices. And Daniel is doing just that. Daniel, I am so happy and proud of you. I love this show. I'm glad we finally figured out how to get you on, bro.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you so much for having me on, Jesus.
So listen, as I close out with some Adam Gottlieb, why don't you tell them about where they can find you on your socials?
Yeah, you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at Totally Dude Poet. At Instagram, Totally Dude Poet, and if you click on one of my stories that's right there on my profile, you can see a number of my poems as well. Check me out.
Oh man, that's amazing. Listen, till next time. Thank you, and thank you listeners for tuning in.